So I'm riding along Stumpy Gully Road, about 20 k's from home, and I look down and I'm at 4,995. So 5 k's time, we hit the 5,000 mark. And there we have it, 5,000 k's. Wow. This bike, I've just clocked up 5,000 k's over, well, actually in January it's 2 years, so it's December now, so there, what, 1 month off 2 years. And I consider this to be one of the best investments I've ever made. So for those of you who just want to know how the bike has gone, very briefly, I can't fault it. It has been brilliant. The rest of the video, I'm going to talk about all the aspects of the bike that make it so good. And I'm going to make a comment here, and this is a personal thing. Unfortunately, Scott don't make this design anymore. They've tended to go the route where they hide the, the shock absorbers and all the other control systems. I think this is a classic design. I love it. It is, yeah, I think it's going to go down just like the Mustang with the automobile. It's a highly capable machine, but it looks fantastic. So there you go. That's my own personal opinion. So let's talk about other aspects of the, let's break it apart, and then we'll sum it all up at the end. Okay, let's talk about the frame. First off, just the design. It looks great, as I said. I love the colour. I love the, I'm assuming it's an anodized process. It's very tough. I've dropped this on numerous occasions on some pretty rocky, I mean, this thing's bounced. I've fallen over, hit the frame badly, and there's very little in the way of scarring or marks. Pretty good surface. The aluminium frame, now look, it's not a light bike, it's 26 kilograms. Well, actually, I think it's 27. But, and we'll get onto that later, but I actually have a theory that the heavier the bike makes it a better bike to ride, especially in nuggety areas. But getting back to the frame, it is, it's robust, it's functional, it looks good, and more importantly, it hasn't given me a piece of grief in the whole time I've had the bike. Let's move on to the suspension. I'm going to start with the front suspension. They're 36-inch forks, and again, they're, if I remember correctly, I think they're 160 or 150. I can't remember. Doesn't matter. The forks on this, again, I can't fault them. They work. Coming down some very steep nuggety trails, and they just soak up all of the troughs and rocks and if you're into this stuff, as you know, when you're coming down some pretty steep terrain and you're coming across some deep ruts that you got to drop down and then get in between roots and so forth, these shocks combined with the tyres absorb a hell of a lot of energy and just work brilliantly. Coupled with the fact that you've got, which is unique to Scott, the it's over here, sorry. I'm sort of all over the place, but I need to touch upon this. The suspension you can control. I can actually both the rear shock and the front shockers. Just by a lever, I can then I can put them in a mid situation, which means that I can make them a little bit stiffer, or I can actually lock them right out. And you'd be surprised how useful that is, especially when you're going uphill. It gives you greater controllability, and also when you're out on the open road, you know. And when you come across some very undulating type terrain, putting it in the mid-stroke takes out that sort of bouncing situation. So all up, the suspension system on this is unbelievable. And while we're at it, the rear suspension, let's just say that that's a repeat of the front. It works brilliantly. So now I think we might logically move on to the tyres, because I want to say something about them. Okay, let's talk about the tyres. Scott kitted them out with the Schwalbe tyres, and I've discovered that they're some of the best tyres on the planet. And this is the Magic Mary on the front and the Hansdorf on the back. This is a softer tyre than on the back, but both of them in conjunction, I feel, this is my own personal opinion, I won't be ever changing them. Whenever these wear out, I'll be putting the same ones back on. They seem to be a perfect combination for year-round travel, whether it's in the dry or the wet. Especially the front ones here, the suppleness of the compound, and at around 18 to 20 psi, just seems to wrap itself around the roots and the rocks. Then you combine that with the suspension, and it is a fantastic ride. I really, and with the Hansdorf at the back being a little bit harder compound, it tends to grip well. So you get this combination where it grips, the motor drives it. This also grips the section that you're trying to go over or climb or go down, and the combination worked really well. Again, a huge tick. Let's talk about the gearing and the derailleur. Now it's the Dior XT series, and again I can't fault it. So in the nearly 2 years, the 5,000 Ks, I've only replaced these two cogs here. They got worn out a bit when I changed the chain. So that's it. They're the only three things that I've actually had to change on this bike in the 5,000 Ks. One new chain and two sprockets. Now, I have had an issue with the derailleur, but that's not a problem. That's not a fault of the derailleur. That's because I've abused it. I recently went off-road into some pretty rough territory, and I picked up well, I'm going to say a branch, more like a log, and it's sort of got itself tangled up between the spokes and this derailleur, and it's tended to bend the derailleur a bit. But that also brings me to another thing: the robustness of the rim and the spokes, the whole wheel package on this bike. I've abused the wheels on this like nothing on earth, and they hold up. Now, I think they're a Synchros model. I don't know which one, but I suspect they're a higher end, like most things on this bike. So, what can I say? I mean, it has been a phenomenal run with the gearing and the derailleur and the wheels. Fantastic. I mean, I will be sometime in the near future replacing this derailleur because of that mishap, but that's no fault of the derailleur itself. The Bosch motor. Now, that's the only other issue I have. It's a small one, but the Bosch logo plate on here, I don't know, about a year in fell off. just disappeared. And it turns out that it's held on by just a bit of what I call it, a self-adhesive sort of a tape. Anyway, doesn't matter. The motor itself, let's get into that. It is my suspicion that at the time when they were building this bike, the Bosch CX motor, the Performance CX motor, was top of the line. Now I believe that there are certain motors now that are getting close. I hear that Shimano have only just this week released a new model, and I think from what I hear it is getting close to how this performs. But to me, this motor is unbelievable. And I've said it before, the EMTB mode, however they developed it, it was a genius move. And why? I'll tell you why. It's hard to explain. There's so much controllability, especially when you're doing technical climbing. You can literally control the amount of force finitely with your feet on the pedals, finitely on it'll give you really smooth, a gentle ramp, and as you need it. So if you're coming up and you're going over a route that you need that little bit of extra push, you just push a little bit, and it you can feel it. It ramps up, but then it stops and just gives you just the amount of power you want. Conversely, when you're on the open road, you're pedaling along, and then you drop below the 25k mark, and that's fine, and you get a bit slower. But you can actually feel the motor kick in just a little bit, and it's a really smooth, sort of very smooth sort of a operation. It means that, in essence, I can feel myself really pedaling hard, and I'm still exerting most of the force, but the motor's just giving me that little bit of extra that I need. Conversely, as you slow down, you can feel it giving you more power. It is, I cannot rave more about it. It is fantastic. And again, it goes to part of the building blocks of this bike to make it such an awesome bike. And the last sort of important area is the battery, and I'm going to talk about that now. Okay, let's talk about the battery. This here. I have not been able to deplete it. I have depleted myself before I could get anywhere near to the end of the capacity of the actual battery. Let me see now. I think the longest ride I've ever done was around 70 kilometres, and I still had 2 bars left on the battery. And that 70 k's, I was buggered. Now this is a 620 watt hour battery, so this proves to me that 625 is the perfect starting point. I mean, let's face it, most batteries these days go beyond that, so what can I say? The other important thing about this battery is that it is now almost 2 years old, and it's got 5,000 k's on it, and the damn thing to me seems to be like new. There seems to be literally no drop off in respect to its capacity and how far it goes. So again, you combine that battery with the Bosch motor, with the gearing, with the suspension, with the tyres, with the frame. This bike is awesome. So let's now wrap up. Before we wrap up, a couple of little other comments. One last little design change I would make. The dropper post, oh, by the way, which is a Synchros dropper post, again, hasn't missed a beat. Top stuff. The control for the dropper post, the only change I'd make is I would put that over here. And I believe that Scott have actually made now a combined controller for the control of the shock absorbers and the dropper post on the one controller. I might even look at updating that myself. But that's it. Again, I feel this is the perfect bike, the perfect e-bike to do all-purpose anything. Now look, I'm not an expert in respect to enduro racing and all that sort of stuff. But for someone who wants to explore anywhere, whether it's suburban streets or out in the bush or technical climbing, steep hills, coming down hills, you name it, this bike does it all. And I'm going to leave it at that. I would highly recommend this bike, especially if it's second hand on the marketplace. I would go for it. Otherwise, I think the lesson I've learnt with this is that any top end bike, doesn't matter whether it's a Scott or a Specialized or a Norco or a whatever, when it's well spec'd out, it's good value for money. I know they're not cheap. I know that. And I'm not going to get into that because that's a completely different, debate we could have. But my belief is that when you're buying the top end units, you get what you pay for. And most importantly, you're getting long life, good usage, reliable usage, and a very capable bike. So I'm going to wrap up here. I don't want it to be too long. Thanks for watching.